Hello and welcome to another episode of Aloe and Ace podcast. I am the Allosexual Skylar.
And I'm the Asexual Jessie.
Jessie, episode 25.
25. I feel like I'm going to say that every single time we record. I'm sorry, everybody. It kind of shocks me. And I don't know why it shocks me because it just feels natural to be doing this now. It's not like I thought it would fail or anything. It's been great. But it's interesting to think of all the hours that we've been talking about this, you know?
But also, it can't really fail because even if we had no audience, we can record whatever we want.
I know. It's just for posterity.
Yeah, posterity.
Yeah.
Before we get started, we'd like to remind everybody, trigger warning, that this is a sexuality-based podcast about asexuality in particular, which may contain subjects such as sex, SA, and self-harm. We try to list any of that in the show notes previously. That doesn't make sense, but put it in the show notes if there is any discussion with that.
Yeah.
We'd also like to remind people that we have a US-based phone number if you want to send us a text message or leave us a voicemail. It is area code 385-645-3651. You can also email us at aloeandacepodcast@gmail.com. And if you feel like buying us a coffee, if you will, you can go to aloeandace.com and there's a little coffee icon and you just click on that and you can just send us a little donation if you so choose.
And you can also reach out to us on pretty much any platform by just searching up Aloe and Ace Podcast.
Sure can.
So that's also wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And friendly reminder, everybody, I know we say this every episode and we will continue saying it. We are not experts.
Not even close.
Not even close. We just talk about our experiences and what we observe. And that's how we do it. And we believe in being honest and thoughtful and kind and curious.
If it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, well, don't know what to tell you.
That's fine too.
Most of the things that we talk about, the reason for the discussions is so that it can bring up a topic of discussion in your own life if you so choose.
Right.
So these are topics that we discuss in our own marriage and our own relationships around us. And so we find that they are probably what other people might also be discussing in
or
their
need
own
to be discussing,
Sure.
probably. Right.
So, Jessie, how's it going?
I'm just looking over at him
I know the face.
in bed.
The face is like someone farted. You're just
Or just how do I answer? You know, I've had this question asked to me several times today while I've been in public for different things, and I don't know how to answer because everything in me wants to say everything is shit. Just it's shit, right? Or if I say it's interesting, then it's like, oh, why is it interesting? And then you're like, do you really want to know? Do you really want to know? The thing is it's been a heavy past 7 days. I learned this morning at my dentist office that I can't say it's been a heavy week because it's only Tuesday. The past 7 days have been weird, unsettling, heavy, scary. It's been a mixture of not great feelings. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, for those who are not US based, obviously the United States of America had our voting
Our presidential election. Yeah.
last week.
Yep. And we don't want to get into it too much because that's not what this podcast is here for. But I'm not going to sit here and act like it's been fine. I spent a lot of tears on Wednesday. There was a lot of tears out of my eyes on Wednesday. And I'm just trying to sit in it and then also think about what I can do moving forward. Skylar, how are you?
I'm good. I share a lot of the same sentiments as you.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like how I'm doing, generally speaking, I'm doing well.
Yeah.
We have received a couple emails which we need to correspond back to.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that you know, like, if you do send us an email and we don't get to it for a week, it's not because we don't want to. We intend to email everybody back
Yeah.
or comment back, but sometimes I'll be waiting for something like I want Jesse to say something, but then all of a sudden a week goes by and I'm like, oh crap. So
Yeah, and you know, the other thing is Skylar and I, sometimes only one of us will respond or sometimes both of us do. I'd say, I don't know, both of us respond quite a bit, but we do sit there and we mull over whatever has been said in the message and we say, okay, I think that you would best be for this initial response because it makes most sense, right?
well, and I have about 10 email addresses on my phone at least. And so
That you keep track of?
that I keep track
That's
of.
a lot of
And
emails.
and so sometimes a message will come through, but the subject of it might look spammy to me, so I don't look at it until I'm on my computer, and then I see that it's in this particular inbox, and I'm like, oh crap, this has been unread for a couple days. But
Yeah. What do you think is the very best way for someone to reach out to us?
however they feel comfortable.
Really? So, like any of it?
I would say TikTok is the worst as far as the way in which someone can write back. It doesn't allow you to like do page or paragraph breaks. I guess there's certain Android phones that you can if you have a particular keyboard.
Well,
Inst-
plus we're just not
Yeah.
super active on TikTok,
We
unfortunately.
need to get more active on there.
I know.
Instagram is pretty great. Facebook Messenger is pretty great, and email as well. So
Okay, so
however
basically,
you're
don't
comfortable.
reach out over TikTok. Is that what you're saying?
You can send a carrier pigeon.
Okay, cool.
We do a couple emails that we got recently. I think we will touch on a couple of those things. One right now, and then probably one before we start this part 2 of ethical non-monogamy.
Okay.
So the first one I want to address, I've heard it a few times where a lot of allosexual people, I think, have a hard time relating to the stance that I have as the allosexual high libido partner in the relationship, where I am pretty firm on my stance of accepting Jesse's asexuality, avoiding sexual compliance, and getting behaviors. And
I think overall, just that it seems to have not been a challenge for you to accept all of this.
yeah,
Right.
and some of it may be because of the relief I felt originally.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't say that that's like overshadowing, like I don't feel like there's anything that's being swept under a rug and kind of overshadowed by that
Yeah.
relief, because it's been long enough.
Yeah. Are you scared at all to tell me anything where you would be struggling?
No, because we have a very open communication. I think that
Okay, wait. Would you have been scared 6 months ago? Like, let's think about the evolution, right?
Probably. Well, yeah, because when you've used language like, if you ever came to me and said this, I would leave.
Yeah.
Of course, I would be like, well, I'm never going to bring that up.
Yeah. I had some things to work out and grow on, right?
I do think, and this is putting you probably on the spot.
Uh-oh.
I do think as the asexual in the relationship, I think that you do have a higher, I don't know, a higher trigger reaction to hope than I do with certain things.
Probably. I think in your head, you have completely put that away.
Yeah. So like, for instance, with you discovering something and being like, I'm not in a sexless marriage anymore. And I'm like, sure, that was your thing over a month ago, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen or not.
I know. It's interesting because let's head back to that moment a bit there.
So 5 weeks ago.
Yeah. We had this discovery, right? Where we tried this certain way of having sex and it was okay. That's the best way to put it. That doesn't mean that it wants to happen at all, though.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that it is in my brain. It doesn't mean that I'm going to pursue that happening. And I know that some people are going to be like, well, that's just ridiculous. If you're fine with it, then why can't he suggest it, right?
Yeah.
You can't even imagine suggesting it
I wouldn't.
because you're scared.
Because there's no reason to suggest it, because you haven't come to me and said anything along the lines of, I would like you to initiate once a month, maybe during ovulation or something, when you're more likely to be open to that, to then say, do you want to have a quickie in this specific way?
Is there any part of you though that also is like, I know that she doesn't actually want to, like she's not really into it. And so for me, there's no point.
Well, so again, going back to where I had taken sex off the table, and then I clarified a couple episodes ago and said, sex is off the table for Jessie trying to talk herself into it.
Yeah.
If you came to me and said, if you want to once a month ask me, then I probably would. But that's not, but again, that would be because you came to me with that suggestion.
I don't think I could say I probably would. I think I would say you could come to me and initiate it, but you have to understand that I'm likely to say no. And you have to be okay with that.
But again,
I just don't know.
my main thing in all of this is it's never about me. It's about not adding any harm or going backwards in your journey.
I know, but don't you feel like people might say, healing. Skylar, it needs to be about you, though. You're in this too. You matter too. What is your response to that?
My response is that it doesn't, no matter how I feel about sex, no matter how much I wish or would want to have sex with Jessie, sexual compliance is a big risk factor in these types of relationships, and I refuse to participate in anything that can come off as sexual compliance, period. So unless you came to me and said...
Wait, I think that I have a better way of thinking about it. Because it involves somebody else, meaning me, you don't feel that it is a selfish thing on my part, because you're like, why would I have any say over somebody else's body?
Exactly.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that I get that. I feel my story is that some listeners might think, Skylar just does not even think about himself at all. But I think in general, I think across the board, you feel this way. If it involves somebody else's body, you don't get a say in that.
Yeah, even if I was in another relationship, or even if, we are talking about ethical non-monogamy, even if I had a separate partner, the way that I approached any kind of activity with that other person would be very similar to this, other than the sense of like them not caring if you ask, but I would never assume. I would never try to use any kind of getting behavior or compliance or anything, or talk them into it. It would be very much a consensual discussion every single time. And I would never assume that I'm free to touch them, or... It
wouldn't even be very much so a consensual situation. It would be a consensual situation, right?
Yeah. I'm not saying that it would be partially. I'm just, when I say that, it would be very much a consenting situation.
Right.
Which we've talked about, like with watching Love Island or other of these shows, where I wouldn't just assume that someone wants to make out with me, or assume that someone wants me to touch them in a certain way, unless they specifically told me that they want me to do that.
Yeah. You make those agreements in your relationships.
And so, 5 weeks ago when we had sex those 3 times in 6 days and you were like, "Oh my God, we're not in a sexless marriage, like hallelujah." I was like, we'll see." And not in a negative way,
Well,
but
I guess, okay, for me,
I wasn't like, "Dear diary, my wife discovered this and I am no longer in a sexless relationship."
right. I think in my head, I more so equate it to it's possible,
Sure.
where before it was like, it's not possible.
Yeah.
Now it's possible, but that does not mean that it's going to happen.
I am by no means holding my breath at all.
I feel like that could be taken the wrong way.
I s-
Ain't nobody holding their breath over here.
I still am fully assuming that it could never happen again.
Okay. And how does that feel?
It feels like before. I mean, you were the one that I think was grasping at the straws of hope to be able to
know.
not tell people that you're in a sexless relationship.
I know. And you know what? We got into this topic in therapy yesterday. I did with my therapist with aphobia. And one of the most painful ways to experience aphobia to me is like internalized aphobia, right?
Yeah, it's one thing for someone else to say, "Oh, your levels are this or that," or it's psychological. It's another for you to do that to yourself.
When that is you. Yeah, and sadly, the things that Skylar is saying with me being interested in trying to figure out what I can do, it does feel like a flavor of aphobia, right? Internalized aphobia. And I'm trying to work through that because it feels awful. And it's a spiral because you know what happens is you feel that aphobia, that internalized aphobia, and then you feel so bad for feeling that way about yourself and about your community.
I think
It's a vicious cycle.
I think the correction that I would maybe interject there is if you're doing it in a way to try to fix or something like that.
But I was.
Well, but I think there's a difference between understanding your boundaries and understanding like your flavors or things that you are okay with. I don't think that's aphobic. I think that
Well, wait. I do think it was aphobic of me to be so excited to say that I
Yes.
don't have a sexless
Yeah,
marriage.
that's where the aphobia
That's
is.
what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. That's what I mean.
But you could address it. You could say, you could just be like, I want to try this to see how I feel. And I wouldn't say that's aphobic. Or if you said, I've never tried this position, I'm curious, without like.
What if the goal is, though, so that I don't fit into a sexless marriage family?
Because I don't think that should be the goal.
I know, but that's the problem, is getting past that being the goal.
I think that it should just be about the boundaries or your comfort with certain things. I don't think that the end goal should be to be able to say any particular thing.
But unfortunately, 5 weeks ago, in my head, I was like, I wonder if this will work. Then it won't be a sexless marriage.
And I do think, obviously, 5 weeks ago, there was other things that were happening that may have contributed to that. But I think that
I was in a very exploratory area.
Phase.
Yes. And that's completely great as long as you're watching it, of course, like we've talked about.
So we have not talked about this in 5 weeks.
We haven't. This is kind of just surfacing, oddly.
And I don't know what you thought my feelings were in the last 5 weeks or not.
No, I've thought about it here and there, like just in the last few days, actually, where I'm thinking, I mean, I haven't thought about that at all.
Yeah.
Literally at all. And is that hard to hear that? I feel like for some listeners that could be hard if their partner was like, I didn't think about that at all. Or is it something that you're like, you're asexual and you're sex averse? Of course you didn't think about it.
Well, and I think that's the interesting thing and probably where some people would look at, but if you're masturbating like 3 to 5 times a week, how is it possible that you're not having any sexual thoughts whatsoever in any degree?
Well, if you're like me, where it's just a dirty word that you were using and not really like, I can't fantasize,
Yeah.
so my brain isn't actually thinking of doing something with somebody. It's
Yeah.
very hard to explain.
Yeah. So I think, and we talked about that a few episodes ago where we discussed like the difference between masturbation and being something that isn't necessarily, it was the whole argument of, but it's sexual. And you're like, but it's not,
Right. And actually, this week I had a really interesting discovery that I wanted to talk about when we were going to go over sparks
Yeah.
of the week, And, well, I guess, did we wait 2 weeks? No,
It's been 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Well,
I thought it'd been a week.
Well, no, because we didn't want to record during the election time.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, I was not in a space to be doing that. So this week, here's one of my sparks for this week, my asexuality spark.
Well, before you go to that,
Mhm.
I don't know if I answered anything or not. I think it was more of just a discussion of like why I'm okay with your asexuality. I don't even think it's okay or not
Oh,
okay.
why are you so firm?
Why am I so firm? I just don't believe.
Why are you so certain? Yeah.
I just don't believe that I am owed anything in a relationship other than respect and consensual
Love?
connections.
Yeah, but that's not how you used to feel, just to be clear.
Well,
this has been a growing, evolving thing.
Yeah, and obviously the first, few episodes we discussed that, episode 3, 4, etc. So I am at a place right now where any consensual non-sexual intimacy or sexual intimacy is what I will have, and I'm not going to do anything that's going to cross that sexual compliance boundary or your boundaries, period. So for me, if something is going to make me upset or I'm going to have an issue to where I really am struggling with something, we will have that discussion, which is what we've talked about with the cupped hands, as well as obviously this whole, series on ethical non-monogamy.
Right. One of the questions we got was, would Jesse even ever consider Skylar being able to meet somebody and, do different things with that person. And the truth is that since we have these cupped hands, right, they're not completely flat open and they're not completely tightly closed, Skylar could naturally meet somebody that gets his attention and there's a spark there. And then he would come and have a conversation with me or conversations with me. And then we would go from there and figure out a creative way forward. So it's not like it's not there.
Yeah.
It's possible. But, it's possible in both ways, both directions.
Yeah. You're not aromantic, so you could be talking to someone and there could be a spark and you could want to explore that too.
Right. And I mean, I think this is, do you think we would have had this agreement regardless of my asexuality? Do you think we would have come to this agreement?
Like eventually?
Yeah, regardless, because we would have come to this place of, why are we so scared of everybody?
I don't know. I really don't, because I think the reason why we even, with last episode, which again, if this is your first time listening, I don't suggest starting with this episode. And if you're only here for the ethical non-monogamy, then go to episode 24 first.
Yeah.
So with us dipping our toes for a year in ethical non-monogamy, I don't know that we would have done that other than your feelings of being broken and not understanding your sexuality.
That's true. I don't think we would have ever done anything remotely close to that if I was just allosexual, right?
Right.
That's interesting to think about. My gosh, the journey.
So because of the asexuality and because of us already dipping our toes and then having the thoughts of like, why is everything so scary? I think that's where we're now at this place, or even with stuff, that we've done.
You know what though? I can't sit here and say I hate being scared of things. I hate having fear of things. And I can't sit here and say, even if I was allosexual, that I wouldn't have those fears still.
Yeah, we just wouldn't know.
Right. Yeah. I do think I would still have some fears of people feeling a bit threatening.
Yeah.
Not in any kind of crazy way or massive way, but I do think that there'd be this underlying fear of what if Skylar met somebody that he really liked and hit it off with? Well, at this point, I get to a point where I just face my fears. And guess what? It has put me through hell at times because I do operate that way. But I personally, with our relationship, feel like this is a massive evolving
I do
that we have come to.
Yeah, because I think that there was even a lot of jealousy or uncertainty because of other projects we've been involved with that are fairly public, where you had lots of guys reaching out to you.
Yes. Yep. And you were going through those kinds of feelings.
Yeah. And so, I don't know. And to be honest, we can't say at this moment that we wouldn't have jealousy or hard feelings if
one of us came to the other. Yeah. But I do think that we're in a good enough place where we communicate well enough where we would talk through it and figure it out.
Sure.
Right?
So on to your spark. And then we'll get into more about this episode.
Right. So I had this interesting thing happen this week, and it's going to be really honest and vulnerable and transparent, but I do think it's a really interesting connection that should be shared. So as I've talked about before, when I have my own personal time, wink, wink, I have talked about how, I usually do this in the shower, and it's a very personal thing to me. And, I've talked about how for some reason, just single dirty words just make a connection in my brain and get me to that point. And it didn't ever feel sexual to me. I don't know how to explain that more.
I would say that the vehicle gets you down the road, but it's the gas that fuels the getting down the road.
Right. So and I wouldn't look forward to oh, I'm so excited to think these words.
So you understand that those words are the fuel that get your
it's a very
experience down the road.
It's a utility-esque way of looking at it, I guess. This mechanical utility-esque way of looking at it. I know that for some reason these words get me down the road, right? To my destination.
Yep.
And so this last week I decided randomly to use a device instead of being in the shower. And after I used the device, I decided I don't like saying toy, and I don't know why, but I thought about this, just a little side thought there. But when I used this device, I didn't think any dirty words, and I arrived at the destination without the dirty words. And afterwards, I thought, whoa, I didn't think of any dirty words. Wow. And then the next time I decided to do anything, I decided to use the device again. No, that's not what happened. I was thinking maybe I'll do this in the shower. But then my immediate thought was, how exhausting though. That feels exhausting. I don't want to think those dirty words. That seems exhausting. And so then I used the device again without having to think of any dirty words. It was literally just stimulation. That's it. And I thought it was interesting that I found myself feeling so exhausted at the thought, because I've used a device before, but it always related to something else happening. It always related to somebody else encouraging it, or me thinking it had to be this way, right? I never just did it plain by itself with my own safe surroundings, right? So I had never come to this conclusion before. And I was shocked that I was so exhausted at the thought of it. I'm like, whoa, I really actually don't like thinking of these words at all. It was the same exhausting feeling that I get thinking about, or that I used to get thinking about having sex.
Yeah.
It just felt like, oh my gosh, that takes so much effort. Mentally, physically, everything. That's exactly how I felt thinking of doing this in the shower. And this is something that I've done in that way for 8 years, maybe. And so it felt first of all, it felt very ace coded. Like it felt very asexual of me to be like, how exhausting thinking of these dirty words. When I'm pretty sure that most allosexuals would be like, why is that exhausting to think of a dirty word? Right?
I could
I want to hear your thought behind that.
I could never imagine myself being so like, I don't want to have to look at naked to get this done. Like, why can't I just not?
I don't want to have to think of the word boobs. Oh, so exhausting. Honestly, though, that's exactly what it felt like. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, you are so asexual. Like in my head, I kind of just laughed about it a bit. I felt relieved, though. I felt empowered, almost like, I don't even need to do that. Wow, this is amazing. And then the second thought, it came in therapy where I would have maybe had an aphobic moment 6 months ago, maybe, if I had had this exact same experience where cementing in my asexuality even more felt sad.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what a reminder. I'm always going to be like this. And so it was an interesting experience. And I don't know, I know this is personal, but gosh, we talk about everything on this podcast. So what's new, right? I don't know if that experience could help somebody else or even just relate to the exhaustion that an asexual can feel being in that headspace, because it feels to me just so unnatural.
Yeah.
So there's a spark that happened. I feel like I had two, but I can't remember what the other one was now.
And I wouldn't know.
Did you have any sparks?
No. Well, we just talked about the email and all that.
Yeah.
Are we ready to go into the episode?
I guess so. I want to say that last time we recorded for part 1 on E&M, that was scary, everybody, because we haven't really talked about that so transparently.
Yeah.
And it was just a weird feeling afterwards, like, oh man, okay. But the thing is that shame, just being shameful, just makes it so much worse. Owning it and being authentic and talking through all the things that you learned from these experiences is so important. And I'm happy that we are continuing to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to say that we did have a person reach out and give us another reason why an asexual partner may want to participate in ethical non-monogamy.
Okay, yeah.
So their reasoning was during the dating phase, they wanted to essentially have an open relationship in the dating phase, just to make sure that there wasn't any pressure put on them to be the everything for the person. And so not even being in the relationship, not even having a full-blown relationship, but just being like, from the jump, I'm going to suggest this to my partner so that they understand that I don't want to be their everything. I don't want them to look at me for any hope of anything sexual. Now, if I come to them and I want to participate, then great. Like in my indifference, if that's what I am, if I'm coming to them as an indifferent person, an indifferent asexual, and saying, I want to have sex, then it's there, but I don't want them to think that there's going to be any sort of frequency.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to approach it. And I actually think that for me and where I'm at, I think that that's a good idea. It makes sense to me, actually, even though it might sound interesting. But the thing is that if it's not working, then you both can choose to close it off if you want to. But the scariest thing, in quotation marks, the scariest thing that can happen is already happening at the very beginning, right? You are figuring some of these kind of scary things out at the very beginning and mapping that out to see how it feels without it being so heavy, right?
And I did email back or message back and say, one of the cautions of that is that once Pandora's box has been opened, it is pretty difficult to close.
Unless you're both just like very, very, very into each other and want to be monogamous.
And I think we will bring up, I don't know if it'll be this episode. I don't know if we'll have a part 3 yet.
Yeah.
We'll see how the next 30 minutes or so go.
Right.
But there are some issues that are tied with that as well, where people can feel second class in the relationship.
Yeah, because they're not the main partner.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So let's get into what the different versions of ethical non-monogamy are. So what is just having an open relationship?
Well, in my opinion, and from what I've read and observed, having an open relationship is where you can go separately out and hook up with people
Yeah.
in a separate way.
So whether there's rules or not, which I would say that in most situations there should be some sort of rules.
Boundaries.
So a lot of people talk about like fluid bonding.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously for women, there are some pH issues that can happen if your partner is having intercourse with you as well as someone else without protection.
Mm-hmm.
And just the idea of fluid bonding, generally speaking, as well as STDs, STIs, it is something that is a pretty normal boundary for people.
I'm finding myself being grossed out by fluid bonding. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say it. Okay, go ahead.
So obviously, before you get into ethical non-monogamy, it should be a thing where you sit down and hopefully you're already at the point where you're discussing it, that it's not you just being like, all right, so I'm going to go have sex with someone. What are the rules? But I think having a discussion on what some of these boundaries may be, there are some people that are especially so people who tend to be having an open relationship don't tend to be polyamorous.
Yeah, they're in it for the action more so, I would say, and in a separate way typically.
So there are people who will make a rule, for instance, that you shouldn't have an experience more than 2 times with the same person, because then it's not becoming a relationship, which is the idea of polyamory. So if you're not wanting to have the emotions, having the relationship title, having it be a boyfriend, girlfriend, they, them friend, then you have to limit the amount of contact that you have with that person.
That feels so sad to me. I know that it works really well for some. I can't even fathom that. But I work off of romance.
Yeah.
So that's why.
So, and then there's also aspects of that, like don't ask, don't tell. Like, I don't want to know anything about it. Just be safe. Follow the boundaries that we put into place.
You had a good time. Great.
Yep. Now, whether or not you obey those boundaries, that's up to you. But if you value the relationship and you don't want to come off as cheating.
Yeah. Well, but also your partner is really trusting you.
Yeah.
To follow those boundaries, especially when it comes to using protection. I mean, you are putting your partner and everybody else that they are with at risk, possibly.
Well, and there's also things that can be spread even through oral.
Yeah.
Without protection. So like HPV and stuff like that. So you really need to be mindful. And obviously, if you're going to get into the lifestyle of ethical non-monogamy, you're just going to have to face it that you're going to have to be tested a lot.
Yeah, and you're going to have to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other aspect of it, which is swinging, which is where we were more in the year that we did it because it was with another partner.
Yeah, but it wasn't together.
It doesn't have to be together, but it's normally a couple with another couple.
I really felt like it was more of a together thing.
No, so that's same room. So there's same room swinging. There's separate room swinging.
Okay, it's still in the swinging family.
Still in the swinging family. So swinging typically, other than if you're going to like a swinging party or an orgy, if you will. Swinging typically is a couple seeking another couple and then doing a little swapsaroos.
Mm.
So, and then
But there's not feelings involved with that.
no, there's not. So typically it's soft swinging, as if you're doing like making out or heavy petting, if you will, but not anything too sexual. And then there's full swinging, which is typically, anything and everything you want to do. Some people will still have rules like no kissing.
I can't even imagine that.
But
then again, I don't just want to kiss people though. So, I don't know.
Now, there are situations where so this is harder because obviously we're talking about this more in an allonormative relationship, because it's not likely that an asexual relationship is going to be open to swinging.
Yeah, I don't really see that being the case.
But we just want to make everyone aware of the different flavors.
Yeah, I think that that's a good thing.
And so sometimes in swinging, for instance, especially if you do tie it off in a sense of like, we are only going to swing with you, you're only going to swing with us, then some people will loosen some of the restrictions because they're tested and we're like...
It's kind of a closed situation.
Yeah, so it's a closed situation, so there might be some more freedoms with that. And then obviously polyamory. So those I would say are the three major ones.
And how would you describe polyamory?
Polyamory is the idea that you're not looking to just go have one-night stands, but you're actually looking for a relationship. And some people will... there's further aspects in polyamory, like the level, like having a partner that is partners to both partners.
Yeah. Would you say if someone practices a bit of all of that, that's just E&M?
I would say so. I would say that you would just say that we are ethical non-monogamy. But yeah, I think that, because there are, for instance, people that do swinging that are just looking for a threesome, if you will. And so it's not necessarily so much swinging with another partner or with another couple, but you are doing it with another person.
Right. So maybe that would more so just be open.
And some people are looking for the quote unquote unicorn. So
what does that mean?
So the unicorn is like the person that's going to be your third, that's really only wanting to do stuff with both of you, in a sense.
So they're in like a relationship with both of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
So with polyamory, and this is where it gets a little bit more tricky in the sense of like shutting it down. Because with polyamory, when you're looking at having a relationship and you're actually wanting there to be feelings and you're wanting there to have that possibility of love, you start getting these polycules, or you start getting responsibilities, because just like in any relationship, there's going to be responsibilities in that relationship, whether it's time, whether it's financially, mentally, emotionally. So if you're dating someone and they're going through a rough patch, they lose their job, or let's say that they're renting a house and that person wants to sell the house now. And so now they have nowhere to go.
Yeah. Are you supposed to just be like, good luck?
Yeah. What is your responsibility with that? If their car is in the shop and they need a ride to work, or if they need a rental, like, who's going to help them out?
I feel like most people that are practicing polyamory, if they were listening to this, they'd be like, of course I would help them.
And so that's where with polyamory, there's a lot more involved. And so one of the things that we mentioned a little while ago in this episode was where someone can feel like as a second class. The reason why someone can feel second class is when there's a situation, especially in polyamory, where you have different hierarchies in the relationships. So people who tend to have a house together or live together, they are more likely considered to be the nesting partner. And you can have other people, like a primary partner may show a type of hierarchy where they're always going to be my primary, you're always going to be a secondary relationship.
Right, which then, I mean, some people might feel okay with being a secondary, but most people tend to feel like they don't want to be treated as somebody that's not as important. It's just the way that it is.
Well, and that can be especially true if someone is single, like they don't have many partners, but they're in a relationship with another person who is in polyamory. Because then it becomes a thing where, why is my relationship with you any less than your relationship with your other partner? Why is our love less than your love with them?
I think maybe the example I'm thinking of is if the secondary partner is going through a hard time and they're like, hey, I really need some support tonight. Can you come over? And you're like, you know what? It's my primary partner's night, and so I can't.
Yeah.
That does feel sad.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if the other person isn't in a situation where they have many others to reach out to.
Yeah, and there's also things like an anchor partner where that's someone who you don't necessarily live with and might not even be a quote unquote primary partner, but they're someone who grounds you or feels like home, is like someone that you can go to on an emotional kind of level to, that I guess just like I said, grounds you.
Yeah.
And so it can be really tricky because if Jessie and I were polyamorous and Jessie had her relationship or relationships that she had, and I had a relationship or relationships, then you have scheduling, you have kids, you have birthday parties, you have things going on, you have different nights.
It's a lot of communication.
Yeah, and planning.
It's already, like E&M is already a lot of communication, which is great actually. But when you are having some like full-blown relationships with others, it's like 2 times the amount of communication, it seems.
Yeah, and so...
Which doesn't have to be a bad thing.
So like Jessie said, like you then have to be like, well, this person's birthday is next Wednesday, which I know is normally our night that we have together. That's like scheduled for us to be at home and watch a movie.
Are you okay with me?
Are you okay with me
going and celebrating with them?
Exactly.
And honestly, I do think that if someone is participating or involved in polyamory in a real sense, in a real way, then they would have a lot of compersion and happiness to be like, yes, of course.
Can you explain what compersion is?
Yeah.
Again, I think we explained it before.
I feel like we did maybe. Compersion is feeling happy for someone else's happiness. So you would feel happy for your partner's happiness that is being brought on by somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I came to Jessie and I said, I did meet someone and I feel like I might want to pursue something with them in a sexual nature.
Gulp. Then my compersion reaction would be, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I'm so excited for you that you had this spark. I'm really excited to see how this goes. And I hope you have such a great time.
Without like wanting to kill me.
No, because if it was real compersion, I would not want to do anything to
well, that's
you
what
in
I'm
that
saying.
manner.
Like it can't be fake. You can't.
No, it has to be authentic.
You can't fake compersion.
No.
So I think that at least with polyamory, there certainly is a lot more involved than swinging or open marriage. Like just open relationship,
the
rather.
thing though is that yes, there is more involved with it to the degree and boundaries that you set right. But I really don't think that swinging is on the table for an allo-ace relationship. I just don't.
Yeah, you're like, you two are going to go watch a movie.
That feels like an oxymoron to me a little bit. Like, what?
And hold hands, maybe, and cuddle while we're doing other things in the other room.
Other adult things in the other room.
Other adult stuff.
So I guess really the things to explore would be an open marriage of sorts, and that mainly feels like it would be one-sided if that is the case. Or there's polyamory, which I do think can be from both sides. It should, in my opinion, it should be reciprocated.
Yeah.
It goes both ways. Skylar, can you explain why it should go both ways if you are having an open relationship? Why the asexual is also able to go out and talk to new people?
Yeah, and I do feel that there are some asexual people as well as some allosexual people that don't feel that either they themselves as an asexual or the allosexual doesn't feel that their partner should be able to go out and do anything sexual, because we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for your asexuality.
Right. But doing something like this, having an open relationship, to me, it has to be equal. It has to be reciprocated. It is an imbalance that will happen, in my opinion, because I should be able to go out while you're out and have the kind of fun that I would like to have then. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be sexual.
Well, and that's where we talk about the bodily autonomy, as well as we talked about in one of the previous episodes where we talked about having cupped hands, was the idea of why is it just sex that is a reason to quote unquote open your relationship? Why can't you get a back massage every night from someone if that's what you want, if I'm not willing to or wanting to do that?
Yeah.
And so when it comes to me, if I come to you and I say that I want to open the relationship, I fully expect that not that you participate, but I fully expect or understand that you have that same option as well. And that it can lead to whatever consensual thing you want to do with another person.
And you know what? There might be, your asexual partner might be like, you know what? I just don't even feel a need. You go do you. I'm happy to be here doing my thing by myself. And that's great. But the important thing is that the option is still there.
Yeah. I think that if you're going to participate in ethical non-monogamy, the
ethical thing to do.
The ethical thing is to make it fully acceptable that both people, or however many people are in the relationship, are able to and without any recourse.
Right. Yeah.
Now, as you, Jesse, if I did come to you and I did say that I wanted to pursue some type of ethical non-monogamy, as an asexual person, or as you, where do you feel like you would want me to avoid? Like, would you have a flavor that you would prefer, or would you be open to anything?
What do you mean a flavor? What do you mean?
Like, would you be like, I hope that you just kind of dabble in open, but not, I don't really want you to have a girlfriend? See,
for me, I can't ethically say, don't you dare catch feelings or something like that. Like, I think I can't imagine that, because all I work off of is feelings.
But this is a hope for, not a what is ethical or not ethical.
I don't know. I guess part of me is like, Skylar would probably be attracted to someone really fucking cool. Excuse my language.
So you'd be like, I want to be their friend too.
I know. I'd probably be like, well, can I hang out like sometimes? I mean, I definitely don't want to be around any of that, but we could go bowling or something. So I don't know. I don't, part of me almost feels like maybe it would be better for it to be a connecting thing, because I don't understand or relate to the other aspect at all.
You have a very hard time understanding why someone would want to have a one night stand type of a situation.
It is so alien to me. It is so foreign. I can't even fathom it. I literally feel like giving myself a hug thinking about it. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Because I don't connect with it in any way. It feels scary and just all sorts of other things. And I know that that's not the way that other people experience it. I know that. But I will say this. It's interesting to me when you have a partner saying, I just need that, I just miss that connecting with you, that connection with you. But then they turn around and say, can I please go have some one night stands? Okay, well, you're saying that there's not going to be a connection there, but then you're telling me that you miss the connection.
Well, and I think
it's not going to fill up that connection between you and I.
Yeah, and I think we've discussed that before. Like, just be honest about what you're wanting.
Right. You want a physical situation.
Typically, it's the desire to be desired.
Right. You want someone to desire you sexually. It's not typically a connection thing. And it's definitely not going to feel that kind of a connection with your partner, your asexual partner.
Well, if it is, it can be a connecting thing, but you can't have it be a connecting thing, but then want to go have that connection with another person to fulfill that connection that you want with your partner.
Right. That's not how it works. Although I will say this, if you are going out and getting those physical things met, then you may feel more comfortable in your regular relationship.
Yeah.
Possibly.
I think that when we look at ethical non-monogamy, especially in asexual relationships where the asexual partner is feeling guilty and the allosexual partner is maybe feeling frustration,
mm-hmm.
I do think that ethical non-monogamy can be a really good option to subside those feelings, and it can give you a way to open up your communication a lot more.
Do you think, though, that someone can genuinely be consenting to an open relationship if they're moving into it out of guilt?
Well, again, that's where everyone just needs to be 100% fully honest.
Yeah, that is key.
And I think that we should bring up that, and I can't remember if we did this last episode, but ethical non-monogamy in and of itself is not a tool to repair your relationship.
No.
It will magnify everything that is wrong in your relationship, because you're going to meet someone, you're going to participate in activities, whether that is sexual or non-sexual. You're going to have other personalities. You're going to have people relating to you in a romantic level even, and it's going to show you potentially everything that your current relationship could be lacking.
Yeah.
It's one thing if you have a great relationship. So if Jesse and I, our relationship is 100% and the only thing that lacking is a sexual connection, not even together, but just me wanting to have sex, then me going out and having sex with another person isn't going to magnify the fact that I'm not having sex with Jesse, because I already know that I'm not. I'm not feeling a lack of sex and being frustrated because of it, and then suggesting an open relationship in our quote unquote bad relationship, and then thinking that that's going to fix it. So if that didn't make sense, essentially, if a year and a half ago I would have brought up opening our relationship because I was frustrated with the amount of sex that we were having in our relationship, with you not understanding your asexuality, then chances are that it would have caused
a divorce.
Yeah, because
flat out, I would have been like, okay, well, you go have fun with that. I'm not going to be any part of this anymore because, well, I will never be enough and I'm not going to sit in this any longer. Bye. That's exactly like I would have reacted very strongly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what's sad is a big part of those kinds of reactions is that I feel so hopeless, right? I feel like there's nothing that I can do and I will never be what you need. It comes from a place of being really hurt, having that kind of a strong reaction.
One of the issues that I have seen in subreddits and stuff like that is a partner will bring up the idea of ethical non-monogamy, and that can cause short-term sexual compliance.
Yes, I can see that.
So because some people are bringing it up to their partner in a way of a ultimatum.
Oh, I don't like that.
Because it's like, hey, if you don't want to have sex with me, then I'm going to go have sex with people. And then
The other person's like, no, I'll have sex with you.
Yeah, like
We'll work on it.
we'll
I'll work
try.
on it. I'm going to do what I need to. I'm going to do this. Yeah. Ugh. I'm sorry, but sexual compliance is never okay. It's never okay. Is it okay ever, Skylar?
Never.
No, it's not. You should not be having sex with somebody if you do not want to be having sex with somebody.
Consent is willful participation, meaning you want to participate.
Yes, definitely.
It doesn't mean that you have to be throwing a party and have poppers and be like, yeah, I consent. But it has to be a willful wanting to participate in the activity.
Yeah.
So, do we think there'll be a part 3? Do you think that we have more to discuss?
I think if there's a part 3, it would look like answering any questions that come up and surface. And that's what it would be more like. Random.
Actually, maybe part 3 will be with dealing with things like jealousy, stuff like that.
Yeah, I kind of thought it would be a good idea right now here at the end of this episode to just give a quick fire, like this is the benefit, but this is the drawback. This is the benefit. This is the drawback.
Or do we want to do that in part 3?
We were supposed to do it right now.
Well, we're not. We can do whatever we want.
I know.
Let's do that.
Do you feel like do you feel like part 2 was more so explaining the different flavors and what those can look like?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think part 3 will talk about pros and cons.
Yeah.
As well as some of the hurdles that you might run into. And maybe we'll pull some stuff out of the book, Ethical Slut.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I just want to make it very clear that we totally respect how other people want to live and their lifestyles as long as everyone is consenting and an adult. We do not pass judgment on those that would like to live different lifestyles at all, as long as, they're consenting and adults. So I hope that we never have a tone of like, ew, that's bad. And no one should do this.
Well, with an asterisk.
Oh, Skylar wants to be judgmental, everybody. Skylar,
Yes.
Tell us how you want to be judgmental.
I do think that polygamy, especially in a patriarchal religion, women tend to be treated like property.
Okay, well, we didn't go over
that. So whether
flavor.
they are quote unquote consenting or not, just having it be based off of patriarchy in and of itself leads to women feeling like property.
Okay, like I said, we didn't give that as an option as a flavor, okay?
Well, you said in all lifestyles, and I want to clarify that polygamy does have a lot of problematic issues.
Okay, guys, for the most part, we understand that there are many different ways to live and have relationships. And if anything, the last 2 years has really humbled us in that area. So we hope that listening, you're filled with hope, excitement, education, all sorts of other things that aren't judgment. That's it. Okay.
100%.
100%. Please, 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 please reach out to us. We love hearing from you always, and we always try to respond pretty quickly. Sometimes if you've sent, more of a meaty message, we like to mull it over a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we appreciate you so much, and we're so happy that you're listening.
And we will record next week.
We promise.
It will not be 2 weeks.
We didn't plan on the election snafu, okay?
Yeah.
We weren't ready.
And maybe we'll do part 3 sooner than next week.
We said that last time.
I know.
And then we
whatever.
didn't follow through.
We won't. Probably
Maybe.
not. Hey, who knows?
But who knows?
Okay, bye.
Bye.